Many students at some point in their training will think they're bad at patterns, or worse yet, bad at landings. But usually they're being asked to solve 10 problems at the same time. But good teaching takes those problems, breaks them down, and teaches them one at a time. And today we're going to do exactly that. Let's get started. All right, everyone. I usually start these videos in the airplane, but today we need to start on the ground, walking around. The first thing we need to do when we start learning how to fly the pattern is memorize the pattern. And that's where a good pattern diagram comes in. So if you're learning to fly, you need to get a good pattern diagram from your instructor. If they don't have one, sit down and talk through what the pattern actually involves in terms of procedures and what they want to see. Then you can go memorize it. But once you've got that procedure memorized, we need to put it into action. And I like to do that first by walking around on the ground as if I was doing the pattern in the air. So here I'll kind of walk through what we'll do today in the Luscombe here on the ground, and then we'll go fly and get started. So let's say I'm on the runway and I'm ready for takeoff, and I'm going to go ahead and put the throttle in. I set the power, we start rolling, we start walking, and we're going to first make sure that the engine instruments are in the green. So we've got good oil pressure, good oil temperature, good RPM, and then that the airspeed is coming alive. We're going to reach 55 miles an hour. We'll have the tail up by this point, and then we're going to rotate. Okay, then we're going to, at some point, turn crosswind, usually 300 feet below pattern altitude, and then we're going to be looking back across the field to make sure that we're nice and perpendicular on our crosswind, and then depending on the wind conditions, we're going to make the turn to downwind. Once we're on downwind, we're probably going to reach pattern altitude, lower the nose, accelerate to 90 miles an hour, reduce power to match that airspeed, and then check our downwind spacing to make sure that we're the right distance from the runway. So we're looking to our left, making sure that's good. Abeam the touchdown point, we're going to apply carb heat, bring the power to idle, set full nose up trim, and pitch for 65. Then we're looking back off our shoulder to decide when we need to turn. Depending on the wind and the conditions, we might turn a little early or a little later. We turn base. We're looking down the final. We look to our right to make sure there's nobody coming, and then we're judging when we're going to turn final to line up with the runway. On short final, I'm going to be thinking about my lineup with the runway, and then my glide, how my glide is looking with the touchdown point. And then usually with a student, we're not going to land, first of all. We're going to do a go-around. And that's because go-arounds are more important than landings. I would never teach anyone how to land if they couldn't first perform a go-around, because the go-around, of course, is the escape, right? So we reach the end of the runway, there's a deer on the runway, or some other obstruction, or the approach isn't going so well, and we're gonna add power, remove carb heat, pitch for 65 to climb out, and now we're back on the walk again here. We're climbing out. We reach our altitude. You usually pass the end of the runway and 300 below pattern altitude. We look left, clear left, turning left, and we're on crosswind now. Look back, make sure we're perpendicular, and then we turn downwind, reach pattern altitude, lower the nose, accelerate, just like we talked about. And so as a student, you want to do this multiple times. You want to walk around with your instructor and have them walk you through what they're looking for and what they're doing, right? And you can even walk around different laps and think about different things that you're going to do. So, you could walk around and entirely just talk about the glide energy and making sure that you're on the right speeds and altitudes. You could walk around and think about the procedures. Am I sure that I've got the order of the steps down correctly, right? We should be walking through these multiple times here on the ground. And you should never go fly the pattern for the first time until you can confidently walk around in a rectangle like this and talk through all of the things that you need to see, hear, feel, and do as you go. And without that, then you're just paying a whole lot of money to do the same thing in the air. right? So this is a very cheap way to get good at the behind the scenes part that goes into flying the pattern, right? So I just did a very quick walk through there of kind of the typical stuff that I would go through with a student, but hopefully you get the gist, and we'll see you in the airplane.
All right, everyone, we've got the Luscombe running, checked our weather and NOTAMs. We already did our walkthrough, and so now we're going to just jump right into the pattern. Like I just said in the walkthrough, though, normally we would go out to the practice area and practice flying around and doing the procedure at altitude without having to worry about the radio, without other traffic, right? We're going to dispense with that here because we're just demonstrating for the sake of video, but that's a vital step between walking it out and then getting to the airport. But we're going to go ahead and jump right into the pattern here. The pattern's clear. Two very important bits of information that we need to know anytime before we go flying the pattern. What are the winds on the surface? What are the winds at altitude? And believe it or not, they're calm, both on the surface and 3,000 here in the Midwest today. Can't believe it, but winds are calm, right? We even had a little fog this morning, so kind of a peculiar morning here in Nebraska, but hey, we'll take it. It'd be great for the video. So we're going to get started here, depart into left traffic, and we're going to jump right into the video. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 77903 is departing runway 202, and we'll be staying in left closed traffic. Wahoo. Okay, doors closed. Final checks are complete. 02's identified. Stick back. Bringing in the power. Okay, oil pressure, oil temperature in the green. Airspeed's alive, picking up the tail. Looking good. 55, rotate. Got a little shedding off the prop there this morning. I don't know if you were able to see that in the video, but we're getting moisture vortices off the prop. It's always kind of fun. Yeah, a little of that fog is still lingering as haze. I'd say we've got 3 or 4 miles visibility right now. Not the greatest. Okay, pitching for 65. Head on a swivel. Climbing out. And we're going to start here just walking through my particular procedure for flying the pattern in the Luscombe. Your results will vary depending on your airplane, your airport, all that good stuff, right? This is just what happens, or I'm happen to be using today. So we're climbing out straight ahead, 65, right? We're going to wait 300 below pattern, which will be 1900 here, and then we'll turn a left crosswind. I can go ahead and think ahead about my crosswind. My crosswind doesn't need to be quick or long. It can be just right because the winds are calm. So that's nice. Can't remember the last time that was true. Okay, 1900, clear left, pick up the left wing, clear left, turn and left.
Stormlight traffic, this is Cherokee 3560 Victor. We're about 5 miles south. I'll be entering the left downwind for runway 25.
Now before I turned, I specifically looked off my wing and picked a point and turned to it. That helps you make a nice 90-degree turn.
Stormlight traffic, 76 Hotel, about a 3-mile final.
Without having to look at the heading indicator or the compass. Okay, now she's climbing good this morning, and we're already at pattern altitude, so I'm going to go ahead and level off. Okay, and pick up the left wing, clear left, turn left, into the downwind. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind, 02 Wahoo. Okay, so let's say I'm doing this with a student, and this is their first lesson actually in the traffic pattern for real, right? We've walked it out, we've gone out to the practice area, and we've flown the procedure, and now we're actually doing it for real, right? The only thing I want them focused on is wiggling the stick, right? Keeping the airplane on altitude, on heading, on speed. And I'm going to do absolutely everything else. I'm going to look for traffic. I'm going to talk on the radio. the student can simply focus on what's most important, right?
Storm Lake traffic.
And that's how good teaching works. We don't dump everything on the student at once. We give them manageable task bites one at a time, right? We eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? Okay, now we're midfield and in the Luscombe. That's basically just fuel on. So we're good there. And we're going to come up and beam our touchdown point, which will be the numbers. And I'm a little high. Carb heat is coming on. Power's coming out to idle. Smoothly and slowly to idle. Set the trim. I got calm conditions this morning. Pitching for 65. I got a lot of glide in it this morning. The atmosphere is nice and stable. Okay, getting to 65, turning base. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left base, 02 Wahoo. Okay, coming around to base. Coming through wings level. Look to my right, nobody coming. Look to my left, I'm high, so I'm going to go ahead and slip. Okay, turn to final.
Traffic, left star 9 Bravo Zulu is about 8 miles to the west of Norfolk. I'll be landing runway 20 Norfolk.
Wahoo traffic, 903's final 02 Wahoo. Now, as I said in the introductory talk, the go-around is more important than the landing. Okay, and here we are lined up for 2, so we're going to start with go-arounds. Okay. And for a wheel landing, I'd probably be able to spank it down pretty good on the numbers, but oh, let's say there's a deer on the runway. All right, we're going around. Carb heat, power, trim, 65, oil pressure, oil temperature in the green. Okay, so there should be absolutely no rush to get into landings, right? My very first time in the traffic pattern, my instructor had me landing on the very first lesson, right? He had me trying to talk on the radio, to do the takeoffs and the landings, right? To do absolutely everything. And it was what we call a helmet fire, right? It was a nightmare. It was a disaster. The approaches were terrible. The landings were worse. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's on the go, 02 Wahoo. Right? My radio calls were terrible, right? It was just all around a bad show. I didn't feel like I had any success at all, right? But that's not what we want. We want to give the student little bits of success, and we can use the analogy of building blocks, right? If we build skill one block at a time, then we can layer things back in later. Right, so now we're turning crosswind. So let's talk about the landing and what's required for it, and that gets to the whole point of the pattern in the first place. Okay, so we're climbing up here, we're almost a pattern. So I was working with a student one time, and he was getting close to solo, and I sent him for a check ride with another instructor, just a stage check, you know, clear left, turn left, to make sure that he was ready to go. And overall, he was ready, but he had rushed his approach to landing, and it had resulted in, I think, a bounce landing or something like that. And the instructor calmed him back down, and then he was able to make good landings, right? But that then gets into the question of what makes a good landing, and there, we can get into that in detail another time. But what makes a good landing is a good approach, right? And a good approach comes from a good pattern. A good pattern comes from good prior planning. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left downwind, 02 Wahoo. Right, a good pattern comes from a good takeoff. A good takeoff comes from good planning. Good planning comes from being safe and ready for the flight, and the airplane being ready, which gets back to our PAVE and I'm safe checklist, right? So, fuel's on. So, we don't want to rush into landings if the approaches aren't good in the first place, and we can't fly good approaches if the pattern's not good in the first place, right? So there's a lot of boxes we need to check before we get into landings itself. Okay, and I took that advice that instructor gave my student, and it was like, well, yeah, I hadn't thought of it quite that way, and it changed how I taught people how to land, right? That's when I stopped making people land right out of the initial lessons in the pattern. Wire traffic, Luscombe 903's left base, 02 Wahoo. That's where we started working on low approaches and go-arounds, right? So those go-arounds are far more important than the first couple landings because we need to be able to escape, right? If we can't get up and away when a landing goes bad, then we're going to be in trouble. Okay, and I'm high again, so I'm going to slip. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's final 02, low approach Wahoo. Okay, now you might be saying, Dave, you're having to slip. That's not good. Well, I would disagree. My Luscombe here doesn't have flaps, right? And so I got to have some way to control the drag. And so I actually think a good approach has a slip in it in an airplane like this. But that's something particular. Oh no, turtles on the runway. All right, let's go around. Carb heat, power, airspeed's good, trim. Okay, climbing out. Wire traffic, Luscombe 903's on the go, 02 Wahoo.
Star 9 Bravo Zulu's turning base, runway 20 Norfolk.
Right, so if we start out with go-arounds, then the students get really good at go-arounds. And then they're more likely to do them. And in fact, I tell my students on their first solo that I expect to see a go-around. If I don't see a go-around, they probably rushed a landing or took a landing too far that they shouldn't have, right? And knock on wood, or aluminum. Every single student I've soloed since I've started doing that has done a go-around at some point in the first solo. Might not be the first one, but they're almost always doing it. I think they all have. And that shows that they're using good judgment, right? So they have good judgment, they're not afraid to do the go-around, and they use it as a tool when things don't work out quite well for them. Okay, now we're turning crosswind. Check my squareness here. Yep, I'm good and square. All right, and I'm going to guess that we have a tiny bit of wind at altitude from the west this morning, which that makes sense. The downwind felt a little crowded, the base felt crowded, and I've been high. So I'm going to assume that the weather report isn't quite perfect. And I seem to be feeling a little west wind. Okay, clear left, turning left. Wire traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind 02 Wahoo. Now, once we've done the go-arounds at the runway, then we work into the low approaches. And the low approaches are where we run down the runway at varying altitudes and speeds, which we'll talk about that in a minute, to work on learning how to be near the ground. And once they get done with that, guess what's at the end of it? Another go-around. And so most of my students have between, 30 and 50 go-arounds under their belt before I ever let them land the airplane, right? And that's where that confidence is coming from, right? And it only takes 4 or 5 lessons to accomplish. And we're building an immense amount of skill in the go-arounds and the low approaches. And then guess what? The landings get really easy, really easy. I almost never have students who struggle with learning how to land because they've learned what they need to see, feel, hear before they ever put wheels on pavement. Okay, carb heat, power's coming out, slowing down to 65, right? So they're familiar with the runway environment, they're used to being down low, and they then it's just a matter of taking out the power and not letting the airplane land until it runs out of speed, right? Okay, we went out farther this time. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left base, 02 Wahoo. Okay, a little slow. Okay, let's see how we're looking this here. Airport looks good. Final looks clear. Yep. Yeah, I think there's a tiny bit of tailwind here on base. Gonna turn final. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's final 02, low approach, Wahoo. Okay, so here we're gonna do a low approach, and then we're gonna do a go around at the end of it to get at that. So, you know, maybe the first lesson, you just do go rounds right at the runway. And maybe the second, depending on how well your go around practice is going. Then once you got that down, then we can start working on the low approach. Okay, and I'm gonna show you what that first typical low approach looks like. So we come down, we get the airplane down, we add power, and then I'm trying to get the student down to the runway, and then we do something like this. There might be some sort of bobble, and left and right, and, you know, swooping up and down, and it's a real mess, right? Why? Because this is the first time the student's ever spent any time near the ground in the airplane, and the, you know, they're not comfortable here. It's weird. And so, you know, we're sliding all around. We're off to the left side. The airplane's over here. It's over here, right? And we're, you know, we're up and down, and then we do a go around, right? Okay, full power, carb, heat, trim. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's on the go, 02. Okay, and so,
Classic traffic,
you know, maybe that demonstration I did was a hair theatrical, but I've seen worse, right? And so what you want to do is start out at, I don't know, roughly 50 feet, right? You want to be able to fly the airplane down the runway at, you know, in a 172 or a Luscombe, something like this, you know, 65 or 70 knots.
Traffic, Grade Zulu, turning left downwind, departing to the east.
And to focus on maintaining your height above the runway and your directional control and centerline control. And then over laps, we work lower, 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 until we're doing slow flight down the runway, just above the runway, right? Here we go, we're almost up to turning altitude here. Okay, we're clear left, turning left. Okay. Coming around the turn. So all I'm getting at here is you do not want to be in a rush, learning how to fly the pattern, and more importantly, learning how to land, right? It's something that you need to build over time. It's not just one skill, it's tons and tons of skills piled on top of each other, you know? And yeah, so that's, it's vital to recognize what's all happening there. Okay, clear left, turn and left. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind, 02 Wahoo. Okay, we got a duster taxiing out for departure, first one of the morning. Visibility's even improved just since we've been flying here. More importantly, the sun is rising, and that cuts down on the glare through the haze, it seems. But it's probably also warming up. Okay, so we're downwind, and we've talked through procedure, we've talked through the low approach. We're going to do another low approach, and this time when we're down the runway, we're going to look at side-to-side control, okay, and how to keep the airplane centered and straight. But I want to talk about energy a little bit here, and the glide, because this is one of the most important things that I'm looking to teach a student when I'm working with them. And you may have noticed so far that I'm doing them power off here in the Luscombe. And yes, I am doing the power off. That's how they've historically been done. It's also the most difficult way to do it, right? And you might say, oh, well, if it's difficult, we shouldn't teach that till later. Well, here's the scary part. Recall. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left downwind, 02 Wahoo. I think I already called that, but fuel's on, okay? And here we come to the numbers, right? Here's the scary part. I've worked with numerous students who, you know, they came and joined our flying club, or I was giving them a checkout, and they had never once...
What's the distance you can start logging cross country, Trav?
Never once had they done a power-off approach.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And that absolutely blew my mind, because...
You technically got to make a landing at an airport
Well, people are having a chat on CTAF this morning. It is Saturday, I guess. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left base 02, Wahoo. Okay, so we're on base, and what I'm doing is I'm judging my energy here. My speed and my glide angle. And my speed is a hair fast, and my glide angle is a little high, so I'm going to slip just a little bit. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds of slip, and we'll keep slipping. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's final 02, Wahoo. Okay, and I don't know what I was getting at there. I just lost my train of thought. Let's focus here on the approach. We'll get back to talking about that in a second. Okay, so I'm lined up on 02. And here we go. We're coming down. We're going to do our low approach. And I could land on the 2 if I wanted to. Okay, put the power to it. And now we're going to look at straight. So we could absolutely go down the runway crooked if we wanted to, right? We could be in a slip like this. We could be over here like this with the nose, right? We could be over here on the left side of the runway. We could be on the center or on the right side, right? And so what I want to do is to be centered and straight. And those two things are not the same thing. Okay? There we go. We're centered and straight. Okay? So that's a huge thing that I'm looking for early on with a student, is can we both center the airplane on the runway and point it down the runway at the same time. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903 is on the go, 02 Wahoo. Right? And why is it that can happen? Well, because of slip and side slip, which we just saw. And so we got to have a way to think about how to control the airplane side to side when we're coming into land. And a flight instructor, the guy that actually taught me how to fly Luscombes, put it pretty well. Fight the wind with the wing, point the nose with your toes, right? What he was getting at is if you have a crosswind that's drifting you side to side over the runway, you need to use your bank angle to pull the airplane side to side. Because bank tilts the lift and the lift can move you side to side. Your feet point the airplane with the rudder. Okay. Now the problem is both of those two things are interconnected. If you pull the stick to one side to fight the wind or to position the airplane
to the north-northwest,
if you're to the right, you need to suck the airplane to the left and you go left stick, that's going to drag the nose around to the left eventually. And so you'll need right rudder to stop that from happening. But the principle still holds. That's the first action you need. So if you're not straight, you need to use the rudders to point the airplane, right? Then you, if you're not on center, you use the stick to get over there to center. And we'll show this as we get into the rolling down the runway. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind 02, Wahoo. Okay, I made my call. All right, I'll remember that. Okay, so yeah, we're going to try and look at that and see what it looks like if it's correct this time. We looked at what it looks like wrong last time, so now we're going to look at that correct. Okay, and it's very important that the airplane be both straight and centered when we touch down. Why? Because the check ride standards say that the main gear has to straddle the center line, and then the nose has to be pointed straight so that we don't chirp the tires and get a nice jolt out of the landing and land crooked, which can then result in loss of directional control if it's bad enough, especially for a student. And so how do you know if you're landing straight or not? Well, if your flight school or your flying club or your airplane's going through tires, that's a pretty good sign, right? Most tailwheel pilots are really hammered on pointing the airplane straight in the landing, and guess what? Tailwheel airplanes almost never go through tires, right? I had the same set of tires on this Luscombe for 7 years, and we had to change them, and that was over 1,000 hours of flying. We had to change them because they were starting to weather check. The tread was still all there, right? And so, versus a flight school, right, the students are landing crooked all the time, and you go through tires like crazy. Can't tell you how many times students flat-spotted tires at all the flight schools and flying clubs I've worked at. It's just insane. You've got a pile of tires a mile high in the corner of the hangar, from all the crooked landings. Okay, we're in the glide here. We've had more energy than we've needed every time. I still want to slip a little bit on final, but we're going to go out a little further here.
Traffic, air tractor 4 Hotel Bravo is 5 to the east inbound, left base for 20 Norfolk.
Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903 is left base 02 Wahoo. Now we're in the glide. Why would it be bad if I didn't slip? It would be bad if I didn't slip because if I maintain a steady speed, then that means I had absolutely no margin in my glide, right? I don't have flaps, so how else am I going to change the glide path if I don't have flaps, right? Well, I could change speed, but then that complicates things, right? So here comes the slip. Yeah, 1, 3. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903 is final 02 Wahoo, right? And so now I can use the slip as a fine-tooth comb or as a very fine adjustable tool to put me exactly where I want, right? So it's a very precise way to control the glide. Okay, now we're going to look at directional control as we come down the runway. All right, we're down on the runway. We're straight and centered, right? See that? So at least from my perspective, you're probably closer to the center line. I'm just sitting just a skosh to the left, and I've got the nose straight, right? And I'm low too. We'll talk about the altitude on the next one. But I'm down at maybe 3 or 4 feet in terms of how high the wheels are off the runway, right? And just taking it straight down the runway. Carb heat, power. Well, I did it the other way, power and then carb heat. Okay, trim. 65. Okay, now let's go back to talking about the glide. Now, why am I not doing it with power, you might say? Well, that's a great question. And I did hint at that earlier, right? That's how these airplanes were historically flown. And guess what? I'd be a dead man today if I would not be here if I flew power on approaches. I was going into land with a student at an airport down in Mississippi that was surrounded by pine trees. And at the base of the runway was Interstate 10. And we were turning base from the downwind, and the engine quit. And thankfully, we had enough altitude and glide to be able to very easily make a landing at the airport. But I'm just going to be brutally frank. The way most people fly the pattern these days, if the engine had failed, they would have been dead. Just being blunt. Okay? They'd be dead. Why? Because students today are taught giant traffic patterns, by and large. They're huge. Okay? They're going out really far. They're using an intermediate power setting like 1500 or 1700 or something like that in a 172 or a Cherokee or something like that. And so because you're flying the approach with power, the approach necessarily has to be shallower, and that shallowness drives the approach out further away from the airport. And so you can say, oh, well, almost nobody has an engine failure. Oh, that's stupid. You fly all these power-off approaches. You're paranoid or whatever. Like I said, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't. So you're welcome to continue flying your approaches with power, but the problem is that the power is a crutch. Okay, we got a air tractor on the roll. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind, 02 Wahoo. Okay, the power is a crutch. It covers up a multitude of sins. Okay, you go out too far and you're too low, add power. You're too high, take away power, right? There's a million things that you do not get to learn if you always fly with power. And so I'm not saying you shouldn't fly approaches under certain circumstances with power. For example, I always, at night, man, you'll find me right on the PAPI lights using power, in a 172 or the King Air or something like that. Of course, with multi-engine airplanes, we always fly the approach with power. But that's beside the point. But no, the power takes away a million learning opportunities. And I was saying earlier how I had students who had their private certificate and they've never once done a power-off approach. And what is the one thing that's going to save you when the engine quits, when your wife and your kids are in the airplane? A power-off approach, right? Carb heat, coming out to idle. I would like to at least have practiced that, right? And more importantly, I'd like to be really good at it, right? Okay, carb heat, idle, going to 65. Okay, and so, okay, I'm looking back off my wing. Got tons of glide this morning. Go ahead and turn base, right? And so if you don't have power, you have to get creative. And I don't mean creative in a bad sense. I just mean you have to be a lot more focused on the approach. You have to know what will improve your glide, what will make your glide worse, necessarily worse sometimes. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left base, 02, Wahoo. Right, you got to have options in case things start getting better or worse, right? Because you don't want to end up with too much or too little energy, right? And so, you know, my private students all train with power-off approaches from day one of the pattern, and I'm just going to be brutally frank, they could whip just about any commercial student's rear end on the power-off 180, right? I'll just be completely frank. That's a fact, right? And so here we come. We're coming in for 02. Why? Because they're comfortable. They understand the physics at an operational standpoint, right? They know when to feel, lift and sink, all sorts of stuff. All right, we're coming down. Now we're going to talk about altitude now that we're down here. Okay, so I put the power in. And now what I usually do, like I said, you know, usually we might start up here at 50 feet or something like this. And then what I'm doing over each and every lap is I'm working the student lower and lower and lower. And what I'm looking for is that eventually we're just skimming down the runway, right? We're just right here. You know, we're a foot or two off the runway. And then usually you're about, you know, in this, you know, last third of the runway, we're doing a go-around, okay? But that's what I'm looking for before I ever let anyone learn how to land, is that we can fly straight and centered and low and smooth and under control down the runway. Okay, and once they can do that, learning how to land is easy, right? So back to the power-off approach, right? My private students, you know, maybe they get their private ticket with, you know, 50 or 60 hours, maybe, if, you know, if they're on the average track, right? I would have no fear whatsoever being up with them in the event of an engine failure, right? I've flown with several of my former students recently, and we came into the pattern, and first lap, they flew beautiful power-off approaches right to the touchdown point with consistency. They dealt with, you know, a thermal or a wind shift or, you know, something like that. And it was a thing of beauty, right? Because the first one is the most important one, right? So if you go out, and we're clear left, turn left, right? If you go out and your first power-off 180 is always a disaster, you do not have the skill. Just be completely honest. If you have to go warm your skill up to do power-off 180s, you don't actually have the skill in the sense that it will be there for you in the event of an engine failure, right? The first one has to be good. So that's the test that I use. Can the first power-off 180 that they make work out for them, right? Clear left, turn left. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind 02, Wahoo. Okay, so we've worked the airplane down low, we've worked it straight, and now we're ready to start landing. So I'm going to do a landing on this next one to a touch and go. But let's keep talking about the glide, right? So we were talking about how if you start early with a student, you can teach them how to do the power-off 180 right from the get-go. And the most important thing that I'm doing in that is an energy judgment and an energy correction. And so what does that look like? I ask the student, high, low, fast, or slow, right? It rhymes. That helps too. I don't remember if I called downwind. I'll call it again. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left downwind 02, Wahoo. Okay, and so I ask them that. And I ask them that on the descent in the downwind, on the base, and on the final, and even in the turns as we go, right? And the faster and more often, well, that's the same thing. The more often a student can do that, right? If we can do that energy judgment, say, I don't know, 10 times around the pattern.
Visibility around Lamar is about 1 mile.
The approach gets better, right? So we need to be able to judge, not just on final, but on even in the descent, on downwind, what the energy is doing, right? So carb heat, power off. So I'm going to talk through that here as I go. Okay, I'm fast, slowing down, and I'm in close. So I'm going to go out further. Okay, I'm coming into 65, so my speed is good. All right, my glide is about to start going down because I reached my speed. Okay, I'm looking back off my shoulder. I'm looking out in front of me. I'm seeing the path that I'm going to take. I know I've got a nice stable atmosphere and a little turn on base. So here, the angle off my shoulder and the vertical angle to the runway changed enough to tell me to turn. Wahoo traffic, Alaska 903, base 2, Wahoo. Okay, 65 on speed and slightly low. But I've also been high every time, so I'm going to angle in just an absolute skosh here. Okay, final's clear, and now we're good on final. Okay, speed's a little high. Aha, there's my problem. Okay, yeah, and there's the slope. The slope is coming back, so I might have to slip a little bit. Speed's a little slow. Turn clear right, turn and left. Okay, coming around. Yep, I'm a little high, so I'm going to hit the rudder. Now I'm going to listen to the sound of the airflow to maintain the airspeed. Everyone's talking on the radio this morning. Wahoo traffic, Alaska 903's final 02, Wahoo, touch and go. Okay, my touchdown point is the 2 itself, so I'm going to put a tire on the 2. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, we're coming down through, straighten it out, and there we go. Maybe 10 feet long on the back of the 2. Okay, now, valuable lesson. We put the power in to say, ooh, about 1,500, and now we roll the airplane down on the runway. And now, watch this. If I push the stick to the right, the airplane goes to the right. Look at that. Push the stick to the left, the airplane goes to the left. Okay? I can drive the airplane back and forth across the runway with the stick. Okay? That's what my instructor that originally taught me how to fly the Luscombe was getting at when he said fight the wind with the wing, point the nose with the toes, right? You can move the airplane side to side across the runway with the stick. Now let me give you an important caveat after I make the call here. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's on the go, 02, Wahoo. Okay, what is it that makes the stick move the airplane side to side across the runway? Well, it's a combination of aerodynamics with the ailerons and the lift in the wings and even the flexibility of the airframe and tire pressures and gear leg geometry. There's a whole lot that factors into how an airplane is going to behave left and right on the runway. So what you need to do is you need to go out and find out, right? You need to put the airplane on the runway, rolling down the runway, and find out what it does. And believe it or not, there are airplanes out there that will actually do the opposite, right? So I was working with a student in a Piper Colt one time, and I was telling him that, and I was trying to get him to do it, and it was just not working. Okay, clear left, turning left. And so I took the controls, ran it down the runway, pushed the stick to the left, and the airplane went to the right, the opposite of what the Luscombe just did that you just saw.
We can still get in coming out of the south.
Right? And that's because the Colt has different gear leg geometry, and it has really short little wings, and it has a ton of adverse yaw, right? So in my best estimate, the adverse yaw was actually winning over the tire pressure changes and the friction in the tires and the lifting in the wings and such.
I wondered if you could still see good enough to land, but if you're there, you can.
Okay. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind 02, Wahoo. Okay, and so that airplane did the opposite. Now, so what we found is that if he needed to go left, he needed to move the stick to the right. That's disconcerting, right? Okay, we're downwind, let me make my downwind call. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left downwind 02, Wahoo. Okay, and then, you know, you can go out and try it in a Cessna 172, and it will do the same thing as a Luscombe. It's just a little less noticeable. but you can absolutely drive a 172 side to side across the runway with the ailerons. And so, once again, kind of back to some of my earlier videos, we need to go out and simply give the airplane a chance to say what it wants to do or what its natural tendencies are, right? But the Luscombe has very strong stick coupling into how the airplane behaves side to side on the runway. Okay, we're midfield, fuel cell both. I already made my call. See how we're doing on time here. Okay, I should actually have a student coming into the pattern here shortly. Add beam the numbers, carb heat. All right, let's talk through the energy in the glide here. Okay, power's coming out. Idle. Trimming, slowing to 65. Okay, 65, glide starting down. So, on speed, high. Okay, slightly fast. High, but not as high. And we're still going away from the airport, so that's a corrective measure. Okay, 65, and there we go. Starting to look better.
Citation 727 Yankee Bravo's. And about a 8 mile.
Okay, I want to get around this turn as quickly as I can, coordinated so that I can look at the runway. Wire traffic, Luscombe 903's left base 02 Wahoo. Okay, I'm slightly low, but I'm on speed. I'm going to turn in just a little bit. So geometry is my biggest tool, right, to make the approach work. I can turn in or out on base. You know, I can extend or turn early on downwind. Okay, now that pulled my glide back in, and I'm even a little fast now, so here comes the slip. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's, final 02, touch and go, Wahoo. Okay, so now I'm coming around, I'm slipping. Again, my touchdown point is the 2.
Traffic, Cessna 131 Whiskey Charlie is...
Okay, I'm on the fast side here. I can hear that in the airframe and the pitch attitude. Okay, I'm coming back into it. Okay, I'm between the lights. That's good. Oh, a little bouncy. There we go. And a hair long again. About 20 feet long that time. Okay, put the power in. Rolling it down the runway. 1500 RPM. 50. Now, we can see that if I use the rudders, it will yaw the airplane side to side, or turn the airplane side to side. But more importantly, I can hit left rudder or left stick and right rudder and keep the airplane straight. I could go right stick and left rudder and keep the airplane straight. Of course, I'll come up on the right tire if I got enough speed. But so it goes. Okay, full power, carb heat, pressures, temperatures in the green.
2 Juliet Alpha holding short, 02 Wahoo.
Set the trim. Pitching for 65. On the climb out. Crop dusters are starting to come out. Okay, so we're in the climb out now. And so, once again, we see that two things can do the same thing, right? That we can use the stick and we can use the rudders to move the airplane side to side. If I had a choice, though, in the Luscombe, and a 172 and a Piper or something like that, if I'm not on centerline, I'm going to point the stick or the yoke to get me there, and then I'll do what I need to do with my feet to keep the airplane straight. But I remember I watched a video a while back of a guy doing patterns in a Luscombe, and he almost ran it off the side of the runway. And he had a crosswind, and he didn't have any stick into the crosswind. And he was almost out of rudder, like he just about completely ran out of rudder.
Final for 13, Sam.
Oh, there's a crop duster below me. Scary when you see a shadow that's not your own zooming up behind you. But hey, the crop dusters, they don't get above, 100 feet, I'd say on average. Got another one on the roll.
Local traffic 6838, base for runway 17.
Okay, let's see here. Turner downwind. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left downwind 02 Wahoo. Okay, so we're coming into the downwind.
Sioux County Regional.
And yeah, so he almost ran out of rudder, right? And if he had, and the wind had picked up any more, would have been screwed, right? So, right, fight that wind with the wing, point the nose with your toes. And that'll help you get in the correct cross control when you do it. And that's another thing I see that's really tough for students is that we're coming around the pattern and I'm like, stay coordinated. You know, you're trying to keep them coordinated. You might intentionally slip or something like that to lose altitude, but then, you know, now we get down on the runway and the logic in the head for the feet and the hands completely changes.
52 is about 5 miles to the west. We'll be entering the downwind for runway 02, full stop, Wahoo.
Okay, we got someone coming in from the west. Oh, my student wants to know if he can come.
Flies from the traffic, good, I have 49 Yankees over Beaver Lake, descending through 5,600.
Now final for 35 for Sioux County Regional.
Okay.
Sioux County, 4 o'clock whiskey, 4 miles south of bound.
Getting busy here. Might be our time to call it.
Midfield, left downwind, 35.
I already checked our fuel. Okay, carb heat's coming on. Now, let's see if we can
miles directly east of field, going to join a left downwind for 161.
use our geometry here to control our glide. Okay, so I'm going to try not to slip at all. Okay, and we're going to see what I'm getting at here, why this is so difficult. Okay, 65 in the descent. I'm going to have to go out a lot further. Flight traffic, Luscombe 903 is left base 02, Wahoo. Alright, I'm going to try and not slip and go out as far and as low as I can to do that. Oop, thermals are kicking in. Just felt one. Okay, yeah, I'm a lot lower. Slow. Flight traffic, Luscombe 903 is left base 02, Wahoo. Okay, I'm waiting. I might even shoot through final here a little bit.
Flies from the traffic, good, I have 49 Yankees turning final. Jumpers right, left.
Okay, I still got too much energy, right? So now I'm going to have to S-turn, right? I don't want to give up my speed, keep my speed. I don't really like S-turning either, but I'm trying to make a point here. Flight traffic, Luscombe 903 is final, 02, touch and go, Wahoo.
And Wahoo, Cap 2652 is entering the downwind now for runway 02, full stop, Wahoo.
Okay, so there we go. We were able to do it. Let's get this touch and go here. Yeah, I'm 60. Ooh, we'll turn it into 3-point justice. Okay. Good carb heat, good power. Carb heat's in, power's set, full pressure, oil temperature. Okay, RPM's in the green. Up we go. Okay, so I was able to do it, right? I was able to not slip and get around the pattern. But here's the thing. If I had gotten any unexpected sink at all, right? That's the atmosphere descending downwards. I would have had no options, right? So if you are doing power off approaches, let's double check my, I think we got all through all that. If you're doing power off approaches,
left base for runway 02, full stop, Wahoo.
And you're not doing something in close to add drag, whether that's adding flaps or slipping or something like that, you're doing a Hail Mary pass, right? You can't get, right, if you get any lower, you're out of options, right? So it's very important with a power-off approach to have options, right? And so I always like to go back and think about my glider days, and I hope I have more glider days in my future. I loved flying gliders and teaching gliders. But in the glider, it was really cool, because in the glider, we had spoilers, right? And the spoiler is different from the flap. It comes up on the top of the wing and kills that nice low pressure up on the top of the wing there that's giving us a good chunk of our lift. Yeah, I'm looking for this Civil Air Patrol bird. Ooh, where be how? Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903s, turning left downwind 02, full stop Wahoo. Okay, it was really cool. In the glider, the spoiler handle was on the left side, so it was kind of like a, you know, an airplane where you fly with the left hand on the throttle and right hand on the stick, like a Warbird or an F-16 or something like that. Okay, he's on the runway, no factor. Okay, it was really cool. We would fly the approach in the glider at half spoilers, right? We would bring the spoilers out and we would go to half. I remember my instructor demonstrated it one time. We were coming down the approach and he comes down and he, just as we get over the runway, he yanks the spoilers all the way out and the glider basically went boom and touched down right there. Right? The next time we came in...
2652 is clear of runway 02, back taxi, and we'll be taking off shortly.
Okay, fuel's on both. And then the next one, he did, he came down and closed the spoilers. And we had enough glide to glide almost, I would guess, all the way down the runway in that case. And it showed you just how much drag control you had with the spoilers. And so what we would do in the glider is that we would, you know, here I am, beam my point. Beam the numbers, we would pull half spoilers. And then, if you started to get low, well, you just closed them up. You took away the drag. If you started to get high, you pulled more spoilers in. In some sense, it was kind of like having a throttle, but we were still gliding, right? 65.
Wahoo, got 2652 is crossing the grass strip runway, Wahoo.
Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left base, 02 full stop Wahoo. And so we had control. We could add or take away drag. And so you need to have a scheme to add and take away drag to improve or kill your glide, right? And if you don't have that, well then, you know, good luck, because you're just going to be doing this really low approach, and if anything goes wrong, you're out of options. Okay, finals clear. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's turn to final 02, full stop Wahoo. Okay, so I'm high, but I've got options. Look, I can slip, right? So I hit the rudder, and now down the elevator we go, right? And now I can control it. I can bring it out, and I'm like, oh no, still a little high, right? I can slip a little more. So it's the tool that lets me bring the glide exactly where I need it to be and still have energy left over. Okay, let's put it down on the 2. There we go, we got it. Okay, keeping her straight with our feet. Keeping the tail up, it's nice and calm this morning. Right, and stick back. And window open. Okay, and we're gonna roll it out, turn off. Okay, so I hope you found this lesson useful in going through all this stuff about glide. I know it was busy, right, flying the approach and talking about it all at the same time, so hopefully you found it helpful and not too disorganized. And I bet talking about all these power-off approaches is going to set off a firestorm, but I hope people are nice in the comments. And remember, I didn't say never fly approaches with power. I didn't say that, so don't strawman me and say that I did, right? But yeah, I think we need to be teaching power-off approaches way more often and earlier in the syllabus.
02, left-hand departure, southbound.
Hey, I got one taken there. Clear right, clear left. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's clear, 02 Wahoo. Okay, so yeah, I think we need to be, as primary flight instructors, we need to be teaching private students from the first day in the pattern. We need to be doing those approaches power off so that we don't just become a one-trick pony. Believe it or not, once you teach someone how to do power off approaches, then when you add the power, it's super easy. You basically don't even have to teach them anything. They teach themselves, right? Because it's an easier skill. And so basically you just say, hey, now we're going to do this at 1500, and if you're low, add power. If you're high, take it away. So it's just adding a tool to a toolbox, right? But if that's the only tool in the toolbox, well, it's like showing up to work on a car with only a Phillips head screwdriver, right? You're not going to get much done. If you show up with, you know, slips and adding flaps and changing your geometry and, understanding of what speed is doing in terms of drag, you're a pretty dangerous cookie, right? You can really get some work done, right? So, and I meant dangerous in a good way there, not actually dangerous, but I cross here. Wahoo traffic, Westcom 903 is crossing 1331, Wahoo, right? You're showing up to a gunfight with a proper gun, not with a knife, right? You don't want to show up to a gunfight with a knife. You want to show up with the better weapon, right? So you get a nice full toolbox if you learn all those different tools. And then hopefully if you're learning how to fly, your instructor's not rushing you through and making you talk on the radio while you're trying to learn how to glide, and you know, you're getting different tools to use in the pattern, right? And you're starting out talking through the diagram and you're memorizing it, and then you're going out and walking it, and then you're doing it out in the practice area, and then you're doing it in the pattern. And all those things let you build everything into being able to do it nice and coolly and calmly and collected, and that's great. Okay, we got the fuel. Oh, I didn't get the fuel off, dang it. Oh, there's a air tractor going overhead. Believe it or not, right? Interesting thing. I was really ticked when I came to the Midwest and seeing how all these crop dusters flew around. But it's actually interesting. If you go read Part 137, they're actually exempt from pattern and altitude regulations if they're not getting in other people's way. And so, believe it or not, that's actually legal, right? A 200-foot downwind, they can do that, right? So yeah, if you got yellow planes in your vicinity, you will probably want to know how they're working. You know, go talk to them, figure out how they understand what the pattern is and what they're going out and doing, and talk to them about how you can stay out of their way and how they can stay out of your way. More than likely, they just want you to keep doing your normal thing, and they'll work around you.
2652 in front of the fuel pump. We're taxiing into runway 02. Wahoo.
That seems to me to be how the best crop dusters work. They may fly kind of, low and fast and tight approaches, but they do a good job of staying out of other people's way. So, anywho, good flying with you today. Hope you found that useful, and we'll talk to you next time. Fly safe.